Hello, BookTube. Yes, that was a big introduction. This is going to be my Friday reads, weekly reads, weekend reads, TBR kind of thing. Um, so, I think we should just get into it. So, first off, let's see here. Yes. Agatha Christie's Murder at the Vicarage. Now, this is a Miss Marple book. The problem with this book is that I was not into Miss Marple. The other thing is, I'm going to do some spoilers right now, so if you don't want to hear it, just mute it until I go like this again. Okay? So mute it now. The thing that was just so irritating about this was that Miss Marple said she knew who did it the whole time, from the beginning. Two different people confessed to the murder and turned themselves in. One was the guy's wife, and one was a friend of his or whatever. And so then there were all these other suspects because for some reason the police were sure that the people who confessed couldn't possibly have been the people who did the murder. And then guess what? It turns out that the people who confessed to it were the ones who did it, and they confessed to it to take the attention off of them. Alright, so right there I was just like, what the fucking hell is that? So, okay, we're back. Another book I finished was More Notes of a Dirty Old Man. And I don't know if I've just been so Bukowski'd the last few months that this book was very... I don't want to say it was tiresome, but it felt like I had heard these stories before. Because a lot of the stories in here are parts of what ended up being the books that I've already read. I think. Unless he just had a lot of very similar experiences. But the first Notes of a Dirty Old Man, I think, is a better read. So if you had to pick one or the other, I would go with that one. Okay, I didn't finish that yet. Oh, is that all? Wait, what do we got here? So then I don't have it, so I listened to it, and I listened to it all day one day. Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Now the thing about this book is that it's not written so amazingly that you are constantly like riveted and on the edge of your seat the entire time, but it's just a very well written book. Like, it's not anything that people would go, oh my gosh, this is profound. It's just so solid. Like, I kid you not. Like, it is like very. I was just surprised the entire time with how well the story was going. You know, it's just it's weird. There were a couple dream sequences that caught me off guard. And I've seen the movie, and I honestly, as much as the cliche of what I'm going to say, I really enjoyed the book better than the film, just because there was so much more. Like, there was so much more, and like the whole conspiracy feeling, and that constantly everyone is against Rosemary and everything like that. was very well done. So I felt like she was constantly in danger, even though I knew how the book was going to turn out. But the other thing was the end of it, I think, lasted a lot longer than it did in the film. Like, it was a little more drawn out. And I liked that. I don't know. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. Maybe that's why I went into it thinking it was going to be shit. So anyway, since we're talking about baby horror, I decided to jump right in to Crib. Oh, I love it when I can do that. This is by Harold Lee Friedman, and this book, on the other hand, was nowhere near as riveting as Rosemary's Baby. No shit, some guy says in the background. But the thing about this is that this seemed just like a mystery. Like, this seemed like any other amateur detective mystery I've ever read, crossed with a police procedural. The plot of Crib is there's a woman who was a supermodel, basically, and at the age of like 32 or 31, she decided to quit her profession and have a family. So her and her husband had a baby, and the baby had a little bit of health problems, but it seemed like those health problems, at least at the beginning, it seemed like the health problems were very, very supernatural and demonic. And then when the baby was 6 months old, things got out of hand between her and her husband, and they were constantly fighting because he thought she was spending too much time with the baby. And she's like, he's our baby. If he cries, we need to go to him. And all this stuff. And he was just being really, he's like, we haven't boned in forever. And da-da-da-da. So the baby's like screaming, crying one night. And she gets up to go to the baby. And he's like, fuck that. It's not going to happen. Like, this ends now. And he grabs her. And she thought he was going to hit her. But instead he throws her on the bed and rapes her. Okay? And then the nanny they have starts screaming because while that was going on, the baby died. So that's the crux of this story. And later she thinks she sees her baby somewhere. So that triggers this whole big thing where she wants like an investigation because she can't believe that her baby died and all this other stuff. And it was like thrown to like SIDS, and it was just a mystery. Like, the woman was never in danger. Like, well, maybe like at the very, very end there was a couple dangerous moments, but there was never like stalking. There was never anything frightening. It was just her collecting clues and putting it together. And then the other thing about it is, as you're reading it, pretty much everything you think is going to happen on the next page happens on the next page. So that, I don't know, Twilight made $1 billion on that. So I don't know, but if you like books like that, then you would like that. It's a good book. It's just not what I wanted. Like, I wanted some scary ass horror stuff, and the cover of that is terrifying. So I thought it was gonna be that. So I was a little annoyed with it. Then I read, still on my Burroughs kick, I read The Soft Machine, and the Nova trilogy is is a series that after I read Naked Lunch for the first time, um, I immediately went to these because I knew that they were weird. And the soft machine refers to the human body, and um, the book is about all of the kind of controlling, I don't want to say devices, but the way people and things control your machine, if that makes sense. But it was written use the cut up method. And if you don't know what that is, he would basically cut a page in half and have it fit another page cut in half and put the pages together so it would make a new story. And I remember when I was in high school, I thought this was like the coolest fucking thing in the world. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so like ahead of its time and blah 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 and all this other shit. And in reading it now, like you could tell the parts that are just like straight up narrative prose and the parts that have been used in the cut up method, because a lot of the cut up method stuff doesn't make any sense. It's like not a real sentence kind of thing. And I know that was kind of the idea, but I guess at my older age, I have a lot less fucking tolerance for bullshit. But in doing a little bit of more research on this and the cut up method, I found some super interesting stuff. So basically, there have been 4 major editions of the Soft Machine published. Okay? And I just want to tell you a little bit about each one because it's bonkers. And I can't think of another book that has gone through this many changes. Now, some of you are going to go, the Bible, which is hysterical, but just let me do this. Okay, so the first edition was printed by Olympia Press in Paris in 1961. Okay, it was 182 pages, arranged into 50 chapters that were about 8 pages each. The edition was color-coded into 4 different units and was heavily fragmented. That edition is super rare and the text is not widely available. And you're like, the text isn't widely available? What? Okay, the second edition was printed by Grove Press in the United States in 1966. In this edition, Burroughs removed 82 pages out of a 182-page book, inserted 82 new pages, and the remaining 100 pages were rearranged and reconstructed using further cut-ups. Much of the added material was linear and narrative prose, which is arguably easier to read than the disorganized first edition. Many chapters were renamed and rearranged, and the color code thing was gone. Okay? So, it seems like it's just like a completely different book at this point. The third edition was printed by John Calder in Great Britain in 1968. This time, most of the chapter titles were intact from the second edition, but they began at more natural places in the text instead of in the middle of a sentence. Some of the chapter names were changed. 20 pages of new material was added, plus about 8 pages from the first edition, which had been removed in the second edition. And about 5 pages of material, which was in both the first and second edition, was now gone. So, again, we have a completely different book. The fourth edition, the restored edition, printed by Grove Press in the U.S. in 2014, which was the edition that I read just now, was drawing on the discovery of a manuscript of the Soft Machine that was supposed to be published by Olympia Press in 1963. So it was put together for publication and then never came out. So this edition restores a short canceled chapter called Male Image Back In, restores the 1961 edition's heavy use of capital letters and different chapter breaks, and this edition also includes an introduction and extensive notes, blah 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 blah. So what like pisses me off, I guess, is that when I liked this book, I had read the 66 edition. And now reading it, and I remember liking it, but the 2014 edition, which I read recently, I'm not that much of a fan of. So I don't even know what the fuck I just read. So, I don't know. Tell me what you think about that. I think that's just kind of bonkers to have that many changes in your book or whatever. So, I'm already almost at 20 minutes, so I guess I'll just cut this one now. So this is what I read, and I'll do what I'm reading in like a TBR next time. So, goodbye.